Now what I want to do is to demonstrate the application of first normal form. So, back to basics, we create one-to-many relationships and a master detail relationship. Classic version of that is a file of invoices where you actually have, let's say we don't have a primary key to start with. We have a customer name, we have customer address, we have an invoice number, and then we have an invoice total amount and an invoice date, and then we have invoice item 1 amount and invoice item 1 quantity. And obviously we can have 1 to n. In other words, an indeterminate number of items on any particular invoice. Item n quantity. That's my invoices table. Click that again. So, back to here. Creates one-to-many relationships. Master detail. Eliminates repeating groups. What is a repeating group? A repeating group is a bunch or chunk of rows containing repeated column values. Look at this table. What's repeated in here in terms of master detail? Well, customer name is repeated, but that's static information. That's second normal form. We'll get to that in a minute. The most obvious repetition is this. Invoice item 1, invoice item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The easiest thing to do with this, the most obvious thing to do in terms of decreasing the duplication of data is to take these invoice items out. So what we actually end up with is an invoice item table, which actually contains, and let's go into the entity editor or the attribute editor to get rid of these things because it's easier. Boom, 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 boom. This is what this thing contains. And actually what it contains is the generic terms for these. We don't need to create the repeated values. That's the value of actually pushing this into a master detail relationship. In that we don't have to define all these columns, and we can actually create an arbitrary number of columns. In this table here, as you know, we've got 1 and n2. We'd have to, say, define 10 potentially items for each invoice. If we went over 10, we've got a problem. If we've got under 10, we're actually wasting structural space. Now what we can do with this invoice table is to rename it to invoice, because it's getting closer to just being invoice. We can go to the attribute editor on this table and delete these guys because they're actually in the invoice item table. Now we need to relate these two tables. We're going to create a master detail one-to-many relationship between master and detail entities. We've eliminated the repeating groups of repeating information. Invoice item 1, invoice item 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to n. Elimination of repeating groups. That's what it is. I need a primary key on this table such that I can A, uniquely identify the information on the invoice table, and also such that I can actually create a relationship between these two tables. I could also have, let's go back to here, and create an invoice item number to uniquely identify each invoice item on this table. In other words, 1 to n. This is first normal form. Removal of repeating group information from the invoice table into the invoice item table, linking them with a primary and foreign key. Here's the foreign key, here's the primary key. The invoice number is repeated on the two tables. That is first normal form.